So, talk about mesh lights. Mesh lights are really fun. You can, they're in the Arnold shader. They work for the Arnold, basically an Arnold light. Here's the Arnold tablature about them, the knowledge about them. It talks about the difference between, well, it talks about all the attributes and everything. It talks about the difference between the mesh light and the emissions um, shader, which I'll kind of show you the difference of. So, but yeah, it's basically taking the geometry and making that a light source, in other words. So whatever you decide to create will become illuminate with the light, and then you can adjust it from there, normalize it out, or something like that. It's really good for like mood lighting, I think. If you've got like some candles, you can kind of model the flame and then make them basically mesh lights, like here in the example, like kind of a neon style glow, any kind of like lamp, light, light, light bulb. You just make the light bulb a mesh light, basically, because you illuminate it out and it becomes the light. Car tail lights, stuff like that. I've seen people do that. Well, how do you do this? Say I've got this Taurus here, and I don't have any lights in the scene, so I'm just going to add a mesh light. Not to that, to this. Make sure you have the proper thing selected. And you'll notice it kind of went wireframe on me. Let's open up the Arnold view. If you'll notice, now it's just basically illuminating a light down here, but there's nothing, you can't see it. So the light is working, it's just you can't see this. Obviously it's wireframe right now, so if you look over here in the attributes, make sure this is selected. Trying to get to it. Get rid of this guy. There it is. So if you notice over here, it has created this torus shape in the attribute. You can crank the intensity. It starts to get, obviously more noisy, but it starts to become something. Now this normalize here, this is where you'll really be able to see it. It's going to probably come already checked. That's basically if you were to scale it up, it would affect the lighting. In other words, I did kind of a hard, just to kind of explain it. When the normalize enable, the amount of light contributed to the scene will not change as you scale this light source. So in other words, if you want to be able to see it brighter, I always uncheck it. Now you can really see it, but the thing is now if you go to scale this thing here, it's going to basically scale this light to, or the amount of light shining through there. So you can light visible, that brings in the actual piece of geometry. Now you've got this glow on here. You can turn the samples up, which I wouldn't go very high to begin with. You can obviously adjust the color. It's pretty cool. You can add a file. We'll add a ramp over here, see what happens. Trying to find my ramp. I seem to be having a tough time today with my attributes and navigations. Here we go. There it is. shadows. So now you can see I've applied kind of a ramp in here, kind of makes for, so if you have like a candle or something like that and you kind of want to, you see it's kind of ramping to the inside seam right there, but it eventually starts spilling over. The more colors I add to it. So in other words, if I had a candle wick and I wanted to kind of make the base blue flame and the top kind of a red flame, or the top kind of a yellowish flame, I would kind of ramp them in. So that is an option. Back to my basic blue. There we go. Got a ramp on it, it just has one color. So as you can see, it already kind of like illuminates the whole area, and whatever you do to this here object here, it's obviously going to affect it. And then it's basically a game of, trying to make how that light is going to affect you. Now, I'll show you, it really starts to take shape whenever you add the atmospheric volume to it. That's whenever I think mesh lights really work best. That's what I was looking for. Let this render out. We'll crank this density up. Start to really illuminate the whole area. A nice little glow. Render gets a little expensive. Just whenever it's placking in an area is kind of best. So there's another way, and you can compare the two. Let me turn this off real quick, and I will add another torus. Assign new material. So now you have a shader on here. You can see the specular level kind of coming through. You can do whatever you want to with those. But if you go down here to emissions, kind of crank this up. Now you're starting to emit the actual material. So the difference really, the good thing about this is if you have some kind of geometry shape in the texture, that you have something inscribed on here, it will basically emit the texture that you have, unlike the geometry of unlike the texture of a mesh light, because basically you're not emitting the texture from the mesh light, you're just emitting the geometry. So if you have something scribed, you obviously need to go and like make that part of the geometry, which is actually kind of the way you do neon lights and stuff. You use your text tool in here and kind of write stuff out and turn those into mesh lights. It's always really fun. But if you notice, the emissions of the emission light works a little different. I call it a light. It's not really a light. It's just an emissions texture. But it kind of works with the volume, with some of the shadows and stuff like that. And it just really honestly just gets brighter. You can kind of turn them up and you can adjust the color of the actual emission. So It's kind of up to you how you decide to use them. Um, this is obviously a little less expensive when it comes to rendering, but sometimes their shadows are not really what you're looking for. So, but that is an intro to the mesh lights. And like I said, you've got to use these things sparingly sometimes. Know how to use them, when to, because I have seen people just get, oh, let's just turn this into a mesh light. And then they have a million mesh lights in here and you don't know where they're coming from. Which brings me to the last point that I kind of want to make to start using whenever you start dropping these lights in here, especially like mesh lights and stuff. Trying to find these lights over here in the outline gets a little pain in the ass to go over here, like I was kind of having a problem with my attribute editor a while ago. Start using this light editor up here, basically up here where the render settings are. And it's another box. And you will be listed all of your lights. You can click on them and start adjusting them from there. That's why it's good to name your lights. So if I have like 4 different mesh lights in here, now you can bring up the light editor and start just clicking on there. You can actually turn them off if you want to, disable them. If there's one that you want to disable. Make all kinds of adjustments. It's basically the same properties that are over here. So yeah, start using that, especially when you get mini lights. I saw a lot of people with different elements in there, just, you know, because I see a lot of people not using the outliner, which can be problematic. And that's fine. You don't have to have your outliner open if you don't feel you want more workspace. You just need to be able to keep up with stuff. So, but yeah, so that's kind of an overview of mesh lights, the light editor, using emissions for a sample light, and really using with this atmospheric volume, it really starts to pop then. So it's getting started to kind of get a good glow. These here, the way it's kind of come in and out, this is kind of flattened out. So, but okay, well, have fun with that, and thanks for watching.